And welcome back. We're just going to wrap up our great day for you. It has been the third conclave of 2021, and Resham is back with me here, as we like to do. Resham, great to see you, and I'm delighted that you're here with us.
Lovely to be here, and as ever, great to see you too.
Now, it's been a very lively day. We've had some tremendous speakers, as always. I think one of the things that we can both see, the ABLF is certainly able to bring in a lot of interesting names with tremendous content and contribution. But I just have to say I was beyond impressed there with Lord Desai. And I just think, before we talk about some of the others, he almost gave us a blanket of optimism in many, many ways, and a bit of cautionary warning out there, as he said, I loved when he said, warned it out there, we will all die together unless we learn to live better together. And I think ultimately we heard from many people today who are putting in place making sure that people can live better together. And again, looking at economies around the world and looking what has to be done. And again, I think putting COVID in perspective in terms of this has been a huge eye-opener. When we look at the technology, how it's changed everybody's life and the big difference that it has made. And talk to me a little bit about some of the players that you had. I know when you were talking to Mona Ataya, and she, said particularly too, she's very much a technology company. And I have watched the progress of that company and interviewed Mona several times over the years, and really, really tremendous work that they've done. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, as you say, we're really spoilt for choice here. I mean, 4 absolutely incredible speakers today, each of whom in their own ways was so impressive. But what's really interesting, as you mentioned, is that golden thread of doing things better together for each other. And as you say, Mona runs Mum's World. She set that up in 2011. They serve, over 2.5 million mums and families across the region. And it's just so incredible how she's spotted an area in life where actually technology could be used to make a difference and help people in the way that they live their lives. And of course, the pandemic has meant that need to rely on technology and supply chains to help people maintain their living standards is so vital and so important. And she really brings it down to the people. So she says one of the most important things in terms of entrepreneurship is the people, and the way you value people, the way you recruit your people, and the way you recognize that people need to be driven by a vision. And actually that vision is so fascinating because in each of the 4 sessions that I had the privilege of doing today, you saw people, whether it was through fashion, through art, through entrepreneurship, through representation, or through economic policy, all looking at a vision for a future in which people work together to create a better society for all of us, to bring us all up together.
And indeed, yes, the thread I think that ran through it as well too was this concept of talent and technology. Really, when it works together, this is when it absolutely works at its best. And even listening to the CEO from the Japan Cooperation Center, Petroleum from JCCP, and the work that they've done around the world, and particularly in the green economy and then. But it is always at the very forefront. The technology is definitely leading the way, but that is of no use unless you bring the people in to work with that. And this is something also when we heard from our keynote conversation this morning coming from the Minister of Climate Change and Environment there. I think the vitally importance that he places on people, on their ideas and their creativity, and then they can put the technology to work. Ultimately, I think that it is. So I think it was a very, very bright focus. Talk to me a little bit about Faraz Manan. I mean, just really, really lovely conversation you had there in terms of all of his great work, and really, I think moving, international, well, he is international, but even beyond, it was very exciting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really fascinating to look at how someone that creative and artistic, who's at the top of his game, designing clothes for some of the most famous women in the world, has had to react and respond to the pandemic. He spoke about art and creativity and fashion and making the world a more beautiful place. And actually the fact that couture that he specializes in is sustainable because, I think the pandemic has shown us all that we need to be more cognizant of how we treat our planet, the people within it, our ecosystem, but actually couture is sustainable friendly and is eco-friendly as a choice. And so it was fascinating to hear about how he's used his muse to create, how he thinks about the way in which he creates something beautiful that will bring light and influence to others. And I think that was just such a beautiful way to think about the fact that he loves what he does, but through his work, he brings that joy and pleasure to others as well. So it's really fascinating to hear from someone who, doesn't actually do that many interviews, talk about the role that art can play in shaping society and culture, and how he sees his ambition for taking a South Asian brand onto the global stage. And of course, he has his flagship store in Dubai. So he's already started that real outward-looking, progressive approach to becoming a global brand. But it's fascinating to see his ambitions for how he has to take that high couture work that he does already and make that evolve for a more Western audience than traditionally so.
And I seem to have a theme on energy, which of course is something I absolutely love. So it was great to actually talk to the Director General with the World Nuclear Association, and just see again the great work, because it's about, even from what she's saying, providing power, clean, safe, accessible energy to the world, because ultimately that's what keeps everything going, and that's what keeps all of this technology going. But I do have to say, I think the most memorable bit of technology today, which really proved that nothing will stop us here at ABLF, was Dr. Rubana, who actually, when we think about the technology, she was, and we talk about mobility, she was on the move in that interview, which was a powerful interview, but nothing stopped her. I loved it. She was in her car.
Oh, absolutely. Nothing stopped her, not the car and not the glass ceiling, because actually Dr. Hutt is the first female president after 17 male presidents behind her, in the legacy. And actually what's really fascinating, she talked about the more than 4 million workers in the garment industry that she represents, over 70% of them female. So there's this real dynamic of a fully male board, a woman who's absolutely shattered the glass ceiling, and is talking about the importance of, it's all very well for us in the Western world to talk about sustainability or, wanting to go green, but actually that needs to translate through. So I really like, she talked go human, go green as a hashtag, that you have to think about the people you're affecting too. And so it was really interesting because she gave us that angle of the interdependencies between the decisions we make when we're buying clothes in one country to the impact that has on her mainly female workforce that she represents across 4,500 factories in Bangladesh. And then compared to that, she's in a real position of influence and power there to work alongside government to improve their lives. And then what was incredible was hearing from Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, who is the chief economic advisor to the government of India. I mean, I cannot imagine, my economic knowledge ended at university where I read it, but, I cannot imagine being the person responsible for advising on economic policy that is going to affect over 1 billion people. And, he talked about ethical wealth creation. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of this talk about the ethical elements of growth, the ethical elements of private-public partnerships, and how we have a responsibility to make sure that growth, and that as we look forward, does think about the ethical elements of taking everybody with them in a sustainably friendly way, so that growth is really shared, you grow the pie, and you end up finding a convergence between growth and inequality rather than a divergence.
Indeed, and I think that it fits so well into the theme of this ABLF series. So thank you so much for all of your contribution today. We really, between the two of us, had some great speakers. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know you did too. We're getting everything in place, of course, for our next date, April. We will be back on April 6th. So in the meantime, I think to all of our viewers, make sure you log back into ABLF there. There's so much great detail. It'll be worth playing back some of those, and indeed some of our earlier ones. And do share them, and we'll send you out a notice when it comes around to April 6th and the great lineup that we will have for you then. So in the meantime, stay with ABLF. And Resham, once again, thank you so much.
Pleasure, Eithne. Thank you.